I still remember the sound of that afternoon, and it was the kind of sound that only people who live alone truly notice. The hum of the ceiling fan circling slowly above me, the distant call of a fruit seller pushing his cart down the street, the rustle of old curtains moving with the soft winter breeze. Even the tea kettle making its tiny bubbling noises felt louder than usual. My house had become a place where silence echoed louder than words, and sometimes that silence felt like the only company I had. For years, I had learned to live with it, not because I wanted to, but because I had no other choice. When your children stop calling, when their birthdays and mine pass without messages, when holidays become just ordinary days, the heart adjusts, even if it breaks a little each morning. People say mothers are strong, and maybe we are, but strength doesn't always feel like courage. Sometimes strength feels like waiting quietly, without knowing whether the ones you love will ever return. That day, nothing felt special. I made tea like always, placing 2 cups on the table even though I knew only one would be used. It had become a habit I couldn't break. Maybe it was a foolish hope. Maybe it was a small form of prayer. Or maybe I simply couldn't forget the days when those cups belonged to tiny hands that clung to me for everything. I wiped the counter slowly, adjusting the same kitchen towel my daughter used as a teenager. I straightened the chair my son broke and repaired years ago. I lived with memories more than people, and somehow I had learned to be grateful for even that. But something inside me felt unusual that day. A soft discomfort, a strange heaviness in my chest. Not fear, not sadness, something different. Almost like my heart was whispering a warning I couldn't understand yet. Still, I pushed it aside. When you've spent years hoping for something that never happens, you teach yourself to silence your own hopes. And then, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a loud ring. It wasn't hurried. It sounded hesitant, almost unsure of whether it should disturb the quiet inside. I froze, the kind of freeze where even breathing becomes difficult, as though one wrong move would break the fragile moment. I walked toward the door slowly. My hand shook a little as I touched the knob. When I opened it, the world as I knew it shifted. My children stood there, older, tired, carrying years of stories their eyes couldn't hide, standing like strangers outside the home they once ran through as little kids. For a moment, I wondered if I was dreaming, if maybe loneliness had finally tricked my mind into imagining what my heart wanted most. But then my son spoke, his voice trembling in a way I had never heard before. "Mama, can we come home?" Those words melted every piece of pain inside me. I didn't ask why they came. I didn't ask what had happened. I didn't ask why they disappeared for so long. I simply stepped aside and said, "Come in." They walked in slowly, almost scared, as though the house would remember the years they stayed away. But a mother's home doesn't hold grudges. Walls don't judge. Air doesn't complain. Only hearts do. And mine had already forgiven them long before they returned. My daughter touched the dining table with shaking fingertips, the same table where she once did her homework and fought with her brother over the last piece of bread. My son looked toward the window where he used to sit with his schoolbooks, tapping his pencil loudly until I scolded him to stop making noise. Nothing had changed inside the house, but everything had changed inside us. My daughter whispered, "You kept everything the same." I said softly, "Yes, I was waiting." My son swallowed hard. "We don't deserve to be here, Mama." I didn't argue. I simply waited. A mother's silence holds more comfort than 1,000 explanations. He finally continued, voice cracking, "We were wrong. We thought you didn't understand us. We thought you were controlling. We thought we knew everything." My daughter wiped her eyes. "We said hurtful things. We left without looking back. We didn't even call you on your birthdays. We didn't ask if you were okay. Why did you still wait for us? Why? Because love doesn't know how to leave. I sat beside her, holding her hand. It trembled in mine just like when she was a child afraid of storms. My son sat across from me, eyes wet. Mama, we realized how much you did for us after life showed us how hard the world really is. We sat together in silence for a long time. No arguments, no blame, just presence. Something we hadn't shared in years. And in that quiet space, I felt like a mother again. Not forgotten, not abandoned, simply needed. But healing isn't immediate. Memories return with softness and pain. I began remembering the small moments when things started to drift. The arguments, misunderstandings, the stubborn pride of youth. I remembered the night they left, both of them standing with packed bags, telling me they needed space. I remembered holding their empty rooms like someone holding the last pieces of a broken heart. But here they were, older, wiser, wounded, and repentant. Sometimes children leave to learn, not to forget. And sometimes mothers wait to forgive, not to be right. Their return wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something new, something fragile, something slowly growing back into place. But I didn't know yet what had happened to them. I didn't know why they suddenly appeared at my door, and I didn't know what pain they were carrying inside. All I knew was that this was the moment my heart had prayed for, and I wasn't going to let fear, pride, or old wounds take it away.
My children sat at the table like they were afraid of breaking something. Their shoulders were stiff, their eyes unsure, their breaths shallow. They weren't confident adults in that moment. They were the same two little kids who used to peek from behind the bedroom door after making a mess, waiting to see if I would be angry or gentle. And just like back then, I chose gentleness. I poured tea into the same cups I always kept ready. My hands moved slowly, carefully, because I didn't want them to see them tremble. I placed the cups in front of them, and for a second, none of us touched anything. We just sat there, listening to the quiet sighs of the house. My son finally wrapped his hands around the cup, as if the warmth gave him courage. My daughter stared into hers, watching the steam rise like memories coming back to life. I let the moment breathe. Sometimes silence brings out truths that words cannot. It was my daughter who spoke first. Her voice wasn't steady, but it was honest. Mama, we didn't come back because we suddenly became good. We came back because life humbled us. My heart tightened, but I stayed calm. What happened? I asked softly. Not demanding, not judging, just opening a door for them to walk through. She took a trembling breath. Everything I thought I understood wasn't true. I thought I knew how to live. I thought I knew who cared. I thought I knew which people would stand by me. But when things went wrong, no one stayed. Her eyes glistened as she continued. Friends I trusted disappeared the moment I needed them. People who always laughed with me suddenly acted like they didn't know me, and the person I thought would never hurt me did. I felt the sting of her pain as if it were my own. A mother always does. My son lowered his head, and I wasn't any better, Mama. I chased success so blindly that I didn't see how easily people can take advantage of you. When I fell, when my job ended, when everything collapsed, nobody stood beside me. His voice cracked. Nobody except the memory of you. I looked at him gently. Why didn't you call me? He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Ashamed. Because I didn't know how to, Mama. After everything we said, after how confidently we walked away, I didn't know if you would even want to hear my voice. I always want to hear your voice, even in my sleep. My daughter covered her face with her hands. We made you feel alone. We treated your love like it would last even if we didn't value it. It did, I said quietly. Love doesn't disappear when it's ignored. It just waits. They both cried then, not loudly, not dramatically, but in that soft, heavy way that comes from years of regret. The kind of crying people do when they finally face the truth they've been running from. I didn't interrupt. I didn't rush to comfort them. I let them release everything they had held inside for far too long. And when they finally grew quiet, I reached out and held both their hands in mine. There is nothing you can do that would make me stop being your mother. You leaving didn't break my love. It broke my heart, yes, but not my love. My son looked at me with eyes full of disbelief and relief. How can you forgive us so easily? Because forgiveness isn't something I give because they deserve it. Forgiveness is something I give because I cannot live without peace. I forgave you long before you returned, not because you asked, but because I needed to breathe. My daughter wiped her tears. We thought you were better off without us. No, I said softly. I just learned to live with the empty spaces where you used to be. For a while, we just sat there holding hands, letting the years between us finally loosen their grip. The weight of old memories seemed to lighten. The house, once filled with silence, now held 3 hearts trying to heal. Then my son said something that made me pause. Mama, we didn't just come to visit. We came because we need you. He hesitated before continuing. We want to come back home. Not for a day, not for a week, for real. My daughter nodded slowly. We want to start again, from the beginning, if you'll let us. My breath caught, not from shock, but from the overwhelming wave of emotion that washed over me. For years, I imagined them returning, but never like this. Not with such honesty, such vulnerability, such longing for home. I whispered, "You are always welcome. This house never stopped being yours." My daughter touched my shoulder gently. Mama, we want to take care of you now. I smiled. Then learn from me first. Love without pride, speak without fear, stay without conditions. They both nodded, and for the first time in many years, I saw peace settle on their faces. Not everything was healed, not everything was forgotten, but something had begun, something warmer, deeper, and more truthful than anything we had before. They were home, and this time, they came back with open eyes and open hearts. That night was the first night in many years when the house didn't feel empty. Even the shadows on the walls seemed softer, kinder, as if they were relieved that the family they had watched fall apart was finally trying to come together again. My children stayed longer than I expected. They talked, they listened, and they allowed themselves to be vulnerable in ways I had never seen before. After dinner, simple food, nothing special, we sat in the living room. My son kept looking around, noticing the small details he had once ignored: the framed photos, the old cushions, the faint smell of jasmine oil I always used. My daughter curled up on the sofa the way she used to when she was young, like she was trying to find her old self again. At one point, she looked up at me with eyes that were tired, but full of something new, something like humility. Mama, how did you survive all those years without us? I wasn't expecting the question. I took a slow breath before answering. Some days I survived. Some days I just existed. There is a difference. My son leaned forward. Did you hate us for leaving? No, I said gently. I missed you. I hoped for you. I prayed for you. But I never hated you. Hate comes from anger. Mothers don't hate their children. They only hurt quietly. My daughter bit her lip, guilt pulling at her expression. I should have called. even once." "I know," I said softly, "but life teaches each of us at the pace we understand." My son looked down at his hands. "We thought you were too strict, too emotional, too involved. But now I see you were holding everything together. When we left, the whole world felt different, wrong." I studied him closely. "What changed your mind?" He hesitated, then spoke with a sadness that was raw and honest. "I trusted someone I shouldn't have. I shared everything with him, my dreams, my ideas, my work. When things got difficult, he took everything and left me with nothing, not even my job." I felt a quiet ache in my heart. "I'm sorry you went through that." "No, Mama, I'm sorry I had to go through pain to understand your love." My daughter touched his arm. "I went through something similar. I believed people who didn't care about me. I fought with you because I thought you were trying to control me, but all you wanted was to protect me." I put my hands around both of theirs. "You did not betray me. You simply trusted the wrong world." We sat like that for a long moment, their hands in mine, my warmth in theirs, and for the first time since they were children, I felt like the center of something whole. Eventually, my daughter leaned her head on my shoulder. "Mama, can we sleep here tonight?" Something inside me softened unbelievably. "Of course," I whispered. "This is your home." They stayed in their old rooms that night. Before going to bed, I checked on them out of habit, like I used to when they were small. My daughter had curled under her old blanket, holding it like a memory. My son lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, as if searching for familiar shapes in the shadows he had once known. I didn't say anything. I didn't disturb their peace. I just smiled and closed the doors gently. That night, I slept better than I had in years. In the morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, warm and golden. For the first time in so long, I didn't wake up to silence. I heard footsteps in the hallway, soft voices whispering, the sound of someone opening cabinets in the kitchen. When I came out, I saw both of my children standing there looking awkwardly proud, trying to make breakfast. They had burned the eggs. They had mixed too much sugar in the tea. They had dropped a spoon on the floor and looked at each other like they were in trouble. I couldn't help but laugh. A real laugh, the kind that lifts years off your chest. My daughter blushed. "We tried, Mama." "It's perfect," I said, even though it wasn't. But love doesn't care about perfection. It cares about effort. We ate together in a way that felt like reclaiming time we had lost. They told me more about their lives, what they learned, what changed them, what hurt them. And I listened, not as a judge, not as a victim, but as a mother who was finally receiving the pieces of her children back into her heart. After dinner, my son spoke quietly. "Mama, we want to stay with you, not because we failed, not because life became hard, but because we finally understand who truly loves us." My daughter nodded. We left thinking we were running toward freedom, but we were running away from home. I held their hands again and said, "Children grow, children learn, and sometimes children return with better hearts." The house felt warmer than it had in years. My loneliness, the countless evenings spent staring at the door, the birthdays celebrated alone, they all felt like distant shadows now. Because my children were home, not as the people who left, but as the people who finally understood what home meant. They didn't promise never to leave again, and I didn't ask. Life doesn't work in promises, it works in presence. And they were here, with me, sharing air, sharing stories, sharing healing.
It was a winter evening. The air felt unusually still, as if the entire world had paused to listen to my thoughts. I had finished my simple dinner and washed the dishes. The house was quiet, and the only sound was the ticking of the old wall clock. Around 10 p.m., I heard a knock at the gate. It echoed in the silent night,
At first, I ignored it. I thought maybe it was a neighbor or someone who had come to the wrong house. But the knocking continued, soft, persistent, almost hesitant. I opened the gate, and there stood a young boy from the neighborhood. He looked nervous, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Uncle," he said softly, "your son's wife. She asked me to give you this message." He handed me a folded note. I took it with trembling hands, and he ran away quickly, as if he didn't want to be part of whatever was inside that paper. I went inside, sat on the wooden chair by the small window, and unfolded the note. It was a short message. Just one line. "Please stop disturbing our life. Do not try to contact us again." My heart squeezed in pain. I had not disturbed them. I had not called them. I had not visited. Yet they still felt like even my existence was a burden. I held the paper for a long time. My fingers pressed its edges gently, as if holding it too tightly would break something. Maybe my heart, maybe my hope. For a moment, I could not breathe. I whispered to myself, "Is my presence really that heavy?" I felt something inside me crack. Not loudly, not violently, just a soft, quiet breaking, like a dry leaf falling apart between fingers. That night, I could not sleep. I kept replaying memories of them when they were children, their tiny hands, their loud laughter, the way they used to run toward me the moment I came home from work, the way they hugged me without a reason. And now, I was someone they wanted to erase. I looked around my small room, lit only by a dim yellow bulb. Every worn-out object seemed to hold a memory. A wooden box with old photos, a small blanket my daughter had once used, a metal cup I had bought for my son when he was in school. I held that little cup and closed my eyes. I whispered, "Where did it all go wrong?" I did not blame them fully. Life changes people. Responsibilities change hearts. Not everyone can carry old memories into new homes. But still, the pain was real. Later that night, around 2 a.m., I stepped outside. The air was cold. I could see my breath in the darkness. The street was empty, and the world looked peaceful while my heart felt restless. A thought came to me, soft but clear. Maybe it is time to let them go. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but out of acceptance. I realized I had held on for too long. Held on to the past. Held on to the idea of family as it once was. Held on to a hope that maybe they would one day return. But hope can hurt when it becomes a chain. I walked back into my room and sat on the bed. I folded the note carefully and placed it inside the wooden box with the old photos. Maybe one day those memories would matter again. Maybe, one day, their hearts would soften. But I could not keep waiting for a maybe. That night, I made a quiet decision. I decided to forgive them, not because they asked for it, but because my own heart needed peace. I decided to stop expecting, stop waiting, stop wishing for things to return to the way they once were. Instead, I chose to live gently with whatever life had left for me, and with that decision, something inside me calmed. I finally lay down, and for the first time in many months, I slept. Not happily, but peacefully.
The next morning, I woke up with a strange quietness inside me. Not emptiness, just quietness. It felt like my heart had stopped fighting. It had stopped struggling against reality. Instead, it had simply accepted things as they were. The sunlight came through the small window, forming a warm square on the floor. I sat there with a cup of tea, watching the dust particles dance slowly in the light. For a long time, I didn't move.
I simply breathed. Something inside me had shifted during the night. I felt older, yes, but also freer in a way. I decided to clean the house that day, not because it was dirty, but because I needed something meaningful to do, something that made me feel human again. As I wiped the table, I remembered how my children used to sit there and argue about silly things. As I washed the dishes, I remembered their little hands splashing water in the kitchen sink. As I swept the floor, I remembered their tiny footprints that once ran across it. Every corner of the house whispered memories, but instead of hurting, they felt gentle now. Like they were reminding me of a time when my heart had been full, even if that time had passed.
The next morning, I woke to the faint light of dawn slipping through the curtains. I stretched slowly and listened to the quiet sounds of the neighborhood waking up. Birds chirping, a soft wind brushing the trees, the distant hum of a passing car. I felt lighter. Somehow the heaviness that had clung to me for years was easing. I went to the kitchen and boiled water for tea. As I poured it into the cup, I realized that the thought of my children no longer brought sharp pain. Instead, it brought a calm awareness of love and the memories we had shared, both good and bad. I understood now that love doesn't disappear even when people leave. It lingers, it waits, it heals quietly inside you if you let it. Later that morning, I decided to walk down to the small market near our street. The cold air brushed against my face and carried the scent of wet earth. I bought fresh vegetables, lentils, and some fruit. Each item I chose felt like a small act of care, not just for myself, but for the life I was choosing to continue living, no matter what happened with my children. On my way back, I noticed a neighbor struggling with her cart. Without thinking, I went to help her. As we worked together, she smiled warmly at me and said, "It's good to see you out again." I realized then that the world was still full of small kindnesses. Life hadn't abandoned me entirely. Perhaps I had been too focused on loss to notice the little joys that still existed around me. Back at home, I prepared a simple lunch and ate slowly, savoring each bite. I thought about my children and the note I had received days ago. I folded it carefully again and placed it back in the drawer. The hurt was still there, but it no longer defined me. I could feel a sense of quiet acceptance growing inside me, an understanding that life could still be beautiful, even if certain things didn't turn out as I had once hoped. As afternoon approached, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching children play on the street. Their laughter carried over the walls of my house, a reminder that life moves forward, whether we are ready or not. I closed my eyes for a moment and felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine a future where happiness could return, not from my children, not from anyone, but from life itself. The sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of gold and pink. I opened the old photo album I kept on the shelf. Pictures of my children as toddlers, as young kids, as teenagers, and even some of them leaving for school in the mornings. Each picture told a story of love, mistakes, laughter, and growth. I traced their faces with my fingers, feeling the warmth of memories that no time or distance could erase. I realized that life had given me an important lesson. Love is not about possession. It is not about expecting someone to stay. Love is about giving freely, hoping quietly, and forgiving without conditions. I had spent years worrying about what my children had done or had not done. Now I understood that forgiveness is not just for them. It is for me too. It frees your heart from carrying bitterness, from living in the shadows of anger and regret. That night, I prepared a small meal again, and as I sat eating alone, I didn't feel lonely. I felt strong in a quiet way, as if my heart had expanded to hold both the pain of the past and the possibility of a peaceful future. I whispered a small prayer of gratitude, not for the return of my children, not for the fulfillment of old dreams, but for the gift of surviving and still being able to love. Before going to bed, I lit a small lamp and placed it near the window. Its warm light filled the corner of the room, casting a soft glow over the walls. I sat on the bed and looked at it for a while. The light was steady. It did not flicker or waver. I thought about my life and all the quiet moments I had endured. The tears, the silence, the nights of waiting. And I realized that perhaps these moments were shaping me into someone stronger, someone more resilient, someone who could find peace within herself, regardless of circumstances. As I lay down to sleep, I imagined a small garden behind the house. I pictured little green shoots pushing through the soil, soft rain falling on them, and the sun rising to warm them. I understood then that my life, like that garden, could grow again. Not necessarily in the way I had once dreamed, not exactly as I had wished, but in a way that was real, that was gentle, and that was mine. For the first time in years, I closed my eyes without the weight of expectation pressing on my chest. The night air was calm, the house silent but comforting, and my heart felt a small, steady warmth. I whispered to myself, life goes on, and I can go on with it. And as sleep came slowly, I knew that the journey of healing had begun. My heart was learning to forgive, to release, and to hope, not for the impossible return of the past, but for the quiet, beautiful possibilities that still lay ahead.